All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Both people who have been on the Reno trip and people for whom this is a new experience. This you may think from talking to people that this is just a really great excuse to go stay in a casino hotel in Reno, Nevada, and have evening parties as we watch the election coverage. But we all work very hard during the day, and so I'm going to go through. And let me get the agenda up here. We're going to go through why Nevada, and that is the most important lesson you have to learn when you work in Nevada, which is how to pronounce the name of the state. What we do when we're there, like what will you spend your day doing? And what are the logistics? Like when are we planning to be there? If you're not going to go, how can you financially assist people who are going to go? And how you can make your plans around it. And our moderator tonight is doing something else, and there's only friends on this Zoom call, so it's perfectly fine to just jump in when you want. So first, why Nevada? I started going into Nevada in 2008. I went for Obama's first election. We met in a industrial space storage unit that was crowded with people, and it definitely had the feel of a rebellion, so to speak, right? All these people from around the country had come to Nevada because they wanted to make a difference in a state that was not clearly going to go blue. And it was really important that we help Obama, and so that's what we did. The way that the politics of Nevada work is that Las Vegas votes blue, the rest of the state votes red, and the tiebreaker county is Washoe County, which includes Reno, Nevada. And so when you go to Reno, you are going to the tiebreaker county. It used to be that Nevada was the tiebreaker state, but that's no longer true anymore. Nevada is one of the probably, I would say, five states, including Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and some others that determine the outcome of the election. And so it is not the pinnacle state, but it is a critical state. And you'll see that actually from the numbers down there, we only win the state by a little bit, right? It's winner take all electoral college. So you win the state by one vote, popular vote, and then you win all the electoral votes. Right now, the Democrats are behind in voter registrations in the state. That has not always been true, but that has been true for a cycle or two. And so you spend a lot of time reaching out to nonpartisan folks who the campaigns have modeled as being Democrats. And that's something I'll talk about, which is that you're not going to Nevada to argue with people or to discuss with them or to convince them. You're only going to talk to people who are already going to vote Democratic. So why Nevada? This year, obviously, we want President Harris to have Nevada's electoral votes, but we also need to keep the Senate. And Senator Jackie Rosen, who is has been a senator and was once a casino waitress, who then gave her party and gratitude speech when she won from the casino where she was a waitress, is up for re-election. And there's no keeping the Senate if we don't keep Jackie Rosen. So we have to make sure that we turn out Democrats to vote for her. There is a hard seat that we've never flipped in Congress, which is Mark Amadei's seat. He's a Republican. He's managed to somehow use his incumbency and avoid some of the politics to convince people of the modern Republican Party to convince people to keep him. We also need to keep control of the state legislature for a lot of reasons, one of which is now a state legislature can decide if women have the right to an abortion or any other health care, including IVF. And so right now, the Democrats hold a majority in both chambers of the state. No anti-choice legislation has succeeded, and no voter suppression efforts have succeeded in getting past the legislature as a result. Finally, on the ballot in Nevada this year is a constitutional amendment to add a right to an abortion to the state constitution, as long as the fetus is not viable outside the body, or if it's needed to protect the life or health of a pregnant patient. Right. So no more of this women who have an ectopic pregnancy sitting in a parking lot at an ER waiting to go into shock before they can actually walk or be rolled into the ER. Like you would have that right much, much early, earlier, and it would be guaranteed in the Constitution. So a legislature in the future could not undo it. So what do? We travel caravan, but collect in Reno, and we volunteer. We walk into a Washoe County Democratic office. And that office, which I have worked out our volunteer opportunities with ahead of time, has literature and is coordinating voter outreach for everyone from dog catcher to president, right? All the voter models are all designed to turn out Democratic voters. And so everybody is benefited by your presence. You go in and knock on the door of a voter who the campaign thinks is going to vote blue, and that door knock helps 17 different offices on the ballot and the constitutional question on abortion. This is an important thing to understand, but what we do is not try and talk people into voting for a Democrat. That is not our job. Our job is just to convince them to vote. We know that if they vote, they are going to vote for a Democrat. We don't take risks. Unless you're very experienced, we always go in pairs. Also, it's more fun. You get to talk to somebody all day long, and then you get to pick someplace interesting to eat when you take your lunch break. We use an app. So the campaign has an app that is actually several cycles old now, where it will they'll assign you a list of people to visit, and they'll be all over the area, or maybe they'll just be in one place, but it'll give you directions to go from house to house to house, and it's super fun. And any arguing, any talking to a Trumper, any minute you spend talking to someone who talks about how Haitian immigrants are eating cats is a complete waste of your time and is taking time away from you turning out a Democrat. So, and then in the evenings after we're done, we actually gather in a suite that I've rented at the Grand Sierra Casino and Resort Hotel, which is the only union hotel in Reno that is also nice. And we sit and watch TV in the evenings, and we have some drinks and have some cheese. Sometimes we'll all go downstairs and go to one of the restaurants in the place and have dinner together. Yes, no bed bugs. It's got a really nice pool. I actually haven't been in it in a couple cycles, but it's got a really nice, it's a resort. It's a ginormous resort with a casino. If you want to play blackjack, you can go play blackjack or poker or whatever else you want to do. So let me talk a little bit, and actually I'll ask Anton to weigh in here. Oh, Anton dropped. Okay, well, I'll talk about it. So the first of 3 tasks that you might get assigned is GOTV. And if you actually hate one of these tasks, we can assign you to something else. But GOTV involves getting a list of people who are going to vote Democratic, going and knocking on their door and asking them if they know where they can go vote, and reminding them of the hours, and just asking like a simple question. Here's the greatest question you can ask. Do you have time to go to work, to go vote before you go to work tomorrow? What time do you go to work? And do you know where the nearest vote center is? So there's 2 great things about Nevada. Everybody in Nevada is holding a mail ballot as of 2 weeks before the election, right? So everybody's got a mail-in ballot. And so you can fill it out and mail it. You can fill it out and drop it off. It doesn't matter. But everybody's got a ballot. This is one of the reasons why we have to keep the legislature in Nevada blue, because they'll stop doing that. And you're not actually trying to help them figure out who they're going to vote for. They may ask you a question. You may actually have an opinion. You may say, I think you really need to vote because abortion's on the ballot, and I don't want anyone to ever have to go through a pregnancy that they don't want. Or I believe that women have the right to do whatever with their body. You can give them a reason, but you're not really trying to convince them to vote. You may remind them of an issue, which you look at them and say, I bet you care about X. And then you can do that. One of the greatest things about this is because there's so many volunteers from around the country that come to Nevada, and specifically to Reno, I often say when I knock on a door, if you go vote today, no one will knock on your door for the rest of the election. And I kid you not, people get 4 door knocks a day at their house because there's so many of us, and they will send people out 4 times a day to the same door. And so whatever you do to get them into it is cool. Another job you can do is be a poll observer. That's where you go to an election location, a polling location, and you observe on behalf of the Democratic Party. You're not a nonpartisan, so you can't hand out food and snacks and water. That's reserved for nonpartisan nonprofits who poll observe. But you help, and so Alan has done this, and so I was hoping Alan, you would sort of give an explanation of your experience doing this.
Yeah, so I did this the last cycle. I ended up being stationed at two different polls. The first one at my request was a poll on a Native American reservation, which when I asked for that, I mean, Indigenous rights have always been near and dear to my heart, but I didn't realize that I was going to be driving an hour plus through snow. It was fine. I'm used to driving in snow, so I got there. Very, great people. One of the really interesting conversations that I had was with the poll workers, um, who during a break shared with me that they had thought that the 2020 election had been stolen and they wanted to protect the election's integrity in 2022. And so they became poll workers. They then realized how, with all the training and safeguards that are in place, how implausible the allegations of election fraud were. And so we ended up, just expressing our mutual appreciation for the work that they were doing, the work, and they for the work that I was doing in ensuring election integrity. Um, I didn't. It was a poll that not a lot was happening. So after a few hours there, the I got a note to move to another poll, which was a much more active one. Again, in a snowstorm. And one of the things that I noted during while observing the poll was there was three people doing check-in of the voters, and one of those three was questioning every voter's signature, which then allowed her to ask for ID, which then slowed down the process incredibly. So of the other two would, go through, check someone in, 15 seconds, a half minute, but she would take like a minute or two or more on each one. So that really slowed down the line such that the line went out the building and into the snow. I called the hotline to ask for advice. They asked, is there a pattern? Is she returning away women? Is she turning away Latinos, young people, old people? And I was like, no, she's just turning away everyone. And it's clear what, she knew what she was doing from my perspective. So they were like, okay, we can't really do anything about that, but we'll send someone to corral the folks into the building. And so sure enough, very shortly thereafter, another person showed up, talked to the poll captain, and got her to like do a cattle line back and forth in the hallway to get everyone inside the door and out of the snow. So those were my contributions last time. It was incredibly moving, particularly like observing like something so flagrant.
I don't know how you kept your patience, Ellen.
I regularly practice my patience. I'm in HR.
That would be a challenge for me is to keep my mouth shut.
So Dave, you and I served together at a polling place, and there was all sorts of things that happened there. What is one that really stood out for you where you felt like you just your presence made a big difference?
Well, I think we talked about this before, but the actual polling, I was expecting like maybe there's somebody shows up, armed or something like that, right? Some militia movement. The thing that it became just important just to herd everybody in when we lost. There were no power, there was no light in the parking lot, or the timer was misadjusted. So this entire complex, it was an apartment for old people that was many acres, was dark on the outside. And so what do? You make up signs. How do you read a sign at night without a flashlight, right? So and you go to the other entrance where we had to route people this huge U-turn, a quarter of a mile or eighth of a mile U-turn, and say, this is where you vote. You're here at the very tail end, and you got to get in. So yeah, just adapt. Learn, and everybody was very polite and cooperative.
Yeah, it wasn't this last cycle, but I have previously worked at a polling place, and a lot of what I did was look to see if someone goes to check in to vote and then goes away without voting. And I'm literally, that's like my job is to watch for that person, to follow them out past the 500-foot or 1,500-foot electioneering limit, and then approach them and say, hey, I noticed that you didn't vote today. Can you tell me? I'm from the Democratic Party and I've got a voter protection lawyer on speed dial. Is there something that you can tell me that I can help you vote today so you don't have to come back or go to a different polling place? Because odds are good if you get turned away, you're not voting, right? Just because we're all busy people. Um, and I have sat on the phone with a voter protection lawyer provided by the Democratic Party and worked it out. The one time when it was really, really needed was when a man came who was a truck driver who had no fixed address. And he's allowed to vote. There's a special form for someone with no fixed address who is otherwise a resident of Reno but can't produce a utility bill or a lease or anything else to show that he actually lives in the county. And not even the polling place captain knew that that existed. And so I called the voter protection line. They told me it existed. I went back to the captain and I very politely said, hey, do you have form DS/6 in your box? Because I think that this guy could use it to vote. And he was like, well, I'll be damned, I do. I said, would it be okay if he voted? And he was like, of course. It wasn't a malicious event. It was purely a lack of understanding, and someone had to have that commitment, and that was me, to make sure that everybody voted. And it doesn't require any expertise. It requires a little bit of politeness and the ability to work with people. But that was it.
Shabir, what's the registration deadline for Nevada?
I don't know. It has in the past like been a same day thing, but I don't think it's same day this year. Um, Another thing that we do is ballot curing, and I know that Carter has done a ton of this, much of it with me, and he and I have both found this very rewarding. That's actually a picture of us with the cart packed. I don't know if that was 2022 or 2020, but I think it's probably 2022.
I think you're right. I think that's more recent.
Yeah. Why don't you talk about what that process is like, why it's required, and what you did.
Well, I think one thing that has taken a lot of people by surprise is that the one of the side effects of smartphone-based registration is people are putting signatures on file with their finger on the screen, and they don't match their signature on paper, and that has generated some signature mismatches, and that has driven a fair bit of this, and I think that catches people very much by surprise. And the process, I think it has varied a little bit, but it's generally informing. If the voter may have been informed through the mail that their ballot has an issue, or they may be hearing it from us when we come by for the first time that there's an issue, and letting them know that their vote is in jeopardy of not being counted, and helping them address it essentially, which I think is correcting the signature. You probably remember more of the technical details of how it's done than I do, Shabir.
I mean, we all have sent in a mail ballot once or twice in
Mhm.
our lives, and when you sign the back and you send it in and it doesn't match, they set it aside and don't count it until it's cured. And so, can you remember a particular cure that you did, Carter, that was super good?
Right. I think, yeah, we talked about this before, but I'll rehash the story because it's a good one. Is we went to Native American reservation where the street address organization was really poor, and the names of the streets on the signs mismatched the spelling on the ballots. They were, or spelling on the voter registration, I should say. So this caused a lot of problems with the delivery. And so if somebody in that situation got an issue with their ballot because of the signature mismatch, they were living in sort of this dead zone of poor postal service, where they had already gone out of their way to vote, and probably not, you know, not using the mail from their own house because it was so unreliable, and they hadn't been informed that it was an issue, and they were very grateful that we came by and helped them address the issue, because they had gone to significant effort to vote to get past this, you know, intentional infrastructure fuckery, and they had they definitely appreciated us taking the initiative to let them know that their ballot was about to be spoiled.
Yeah, to give you a sense of scale, Carter and I think, do you remember how many ballots we cured last cycle? Was it 13 or 22?
I, I think the I think one day was 13.
Yeah.
Right. I think we did two days that trip, and I think 22 might have been the weekend number, or the multi-day number, and 13 was a one-day number.
I don't actually know, and I've been doing this a long time, what you can do where you can actually count a specific number of votes that you saved, except for ballot curing, right? And you walk up to someone's house. I remember you and I walked up to this house of this woman. It was a very nice house. It was, probably about 45 minutes south of Washoe, south of Reno, but still in Washoe County. And she answered the door, and I think she'd gotten like an automated phone call telling her that her ballot was spoiled, but she didn't actually pay attention to it. And I realized there was a good chance she wasn't going to take care of this before election day. And we saved it. And, it involved me saying, I'm going to push speed dial for you to call the county registrar. You're going to give them your name, your social security number, and your birth date. And you're going to say, I did in fact send in a mail-in ballot. Please count it. And that was the whole process.
Oh wow! Right.
Right. And uh, there's not a lot you can do. I will tell you, unless you have your own super PAC and you're running TV ads and so forth, there's not a lot you can do where you can actually say, I personally affected 22 votes, and I know it because I met with every voter. And all told, the voter protection folks this year told me that they counted up last year, and Democratic activists like us across the state cured 7,000 ballots.
And one thing I will say is, it ended up not being that way in the final tally, but I was sort of avidly watching the Washoe returns, and there definitely was a period where the number of ballots we had saved was a single-digit percentage of the margin. It ultimately widened to more than that, but it was the point of the evening, and it definitely made you feel like, yeah, this could really make a difference.
Well, the state is so evenly split between Republicans and Democrats that, even 1,000 ballots would matter. I think I do remember a local race where 28 votes, it was not last year, but a local race one year where 28 votes was the difference for like a city council seat. So I think, I never regret that time. And it's actually kind of fun. To give you a sense of what it's like, Carter and I would leave in the morning with our list, and we would maybe stop somewhere and get coffee, and we would be driving around. None of these places are next to each other, right? Like it's a voter here and then a voter 2 miles away. And, somewhere in the middle, you see a really interesting Mexican restaurant that you want to have lunch at, or something like that, or a place that's, on Yelp, it's got like a 5 stars for their Reuben or something, and you stop and eat. And then that's what you're doing all day. And we're all texting each other. I'm texting Alan, I'm texting Dave, I'm texting Anton. We're all in cars. I described this last time as DoorDash for democracy, but that's kind of like what it is. You're in the car a lot, driving around. If you want to work a polling place, you will sit a lot in one place, in the polling place. If you like moving around a lot, if you don't mind driving or riding with someone who likes driving, then you do ballot curing or GOTV work. Any questions so far? All right. So here's the schedule. I'm going for a long period. No human being should go for the entire time that I'm going. I am just taking off of work and going on vacation in Reno for this period. I'm going to go up on the 29th. And by then, early voting will be happening. There will be polling places open. Not as many as on election day, but there will be live polling places for people to go and early vote. There will be ballots to cure. There will be doors to knock, right? You got to get as many people in to vote before election day as possible, because the lines on election day are still pretty long. We will work, whoever's there will work every day, unless you take a day off, which is fine. This is not a job. The only trick is that Saturday, Sunday, and Monday before Election Day on the 5th, there is no live voting. They close all those polling places. They need 3 full days to open and deploy, the 100 and some odd polling places across Washoe County. It's a lot of work. No one gets paid to be a poll volunteer, or at least not enough to make it worth it. It's just a lot of work, and so they need some downtime to be able to move machines around safely and make sure everything's ready to go. But during that time, we can still do door knocking about when you're going to vote, or is that ballot still on your pile of mail? Can you send that in, and then we'll stop knocking on your door, or you can skip election day if you mail that thing. Or curing ballots. You were good. You sent in your ballot, but the county told us that it needs work, right? It needs a cure. So I'm here to speed dial the county registrar for you and do that. And so we'll do that. We'll work election day, which if you stay for election day is a very long day. And at the end of the day, when the polls close, after everybody's left, which takes about another hour for any busy polling place, we go back to the Grand Sierra Casino. And the Democrats in Washoe have their party in the basement, and there's 1,200 people there from around the country and around the state who are all watching the returns. We do enjoy watching them in the suite in the hotel. There's probably some really good whiskey. If Kristen's there, there'll be some really good wine. And we get takeout, and we just kind of hang out on the couches in the suite. But that's the schedule. You can come for any part of this. There's work to be done every day. In fact, if you wanted to come afterwards, there's 30 days to cure ballots after the election. So you can come after the election and still cure ballots. It's actually kind of a quiet, great thing to do. So these are the days. You should probably start thinking about, when you want to come now. If you are going to pay for yourself, reserve yourself a room at the Grand Sierra Resort. That's where I'm staying. And that's where the party will be. It's a nice place, and compared to San Francisco hotel prices, it is not that expensive. I actually got a single king room that adds on to my room for like $79. If you are ready to volunteer, you want to pick your days. You don't have to be solid with those days, but you can pick your days, and you can and go to this URL. It's got a survey of what days you think you might be there. It's not a commitment. But you can go ahead and go there and tell me when you think you might be there, and I will put it on a calendar with everybody else. And I'll post this also to the Facebook group and to my Facebook wall.
Are there days that you feel like are the ones where you need people the most? Like if you were going to say you would do 2 or 3 days, what 2 or 3 days?
It depends on what you want to do. If you are there on election day, there has been some shenanigans throughout the state with election deniers, and they will almost certainly want you to go to a polling place, which is a lot of standing around, and it's a long day. It's definitely a long day. If you can't go, or if it turns out you can't go, I have volunteers that would love to cover their costs. I will not be covering my costs unless I run out of volunteers to cover. But it could be, I think the room and a little bit of money for food and gas could be between $200 and $275 a day. So if you fill out the form 2024 donor and send it to me, it'll ask about your budget. And if you want to give less than like what is a day, if you can give $100, I will piece together $100 donations for that. But if it's less than that, if you want to give $50, that's perfectly fine. But I would suggest you just give it straight to the Washoe Dems, and that link to them is on their website. They will put it to good use, and you'll see if you come to Reno, you'll see like how good a use they're putting it to. Like when we stand in especially the main canvassing location, hundreds of people every hour come in and out from around the country, pick up a list or get assigned a list on their phone and then leave. The parking lot is a constant flow of cars, of volunteers coming in and out. It's actually it's very heartening to see. I actually once met a couple from Alaska that had come down to Nevada to volunteer because they wanted to make sure, they thought they could make a difference in Nevada. You can also volunteer remotely with the Washoe Democrats. I will tell you that phone banking and postcarding is not my favorite technique. It's something that has to be done, but I leave that to other people. But you can also volunteer. The Washoe Dems will put you to work phone banking remotely for them, and you can volunteer at that URL.